President Trump yesterday hosting an entourage of European leaders at the White House, with the end game being aimed at ending the Russia-Ukraine war for good. Trump since has touted the meeting, calling it a pathway to peace, and saying he's trying to bring a final close to the deadliest conflict in Europe that's now been going strong for 3.5 years. Those visiting heads of state commending the effort to end the bloodshed.
The fact that you have said, I'm willing to participate in the security guarantees is a big step.
I think in the past 2 weeks, we've probably had more progress in ending this war than we have in the past 3.5 years.
I think it is an important day, a new phase, after 3.5 years that we didn't see any kind of sign from the Russian side that there was a willing for dialogue. So something is changing, something has changed.
Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Compagno, and joining us today, Molly Lyon, Fox News correspondent, Nicole Parker, former FBI special agent, Fox News contributor Lydia Hu, Fox Business correspondent as well, and Lawrence Jones, co-host of Fox and Friends. Now, security guarantees were a major talking point at that key meeting at the White House. European leaders agreed to offer troops to station in Ukraine, which will operate similar to NATO peacekeepers in the event of Russia and Ukraine coming to an agreement. The president says he has not ruled out the idea of putting U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine.
President Putin agreed that Russia would accept security guarantees for Ukraine, and this is one of the key points that we need to consider.
Your team has talked about security guarantees. Could that involve U.S. troops? Would you rule that out in the future?
We're meeting with 7 great leaders of great countries also, and we'll be talking about that. They'll all be involved. They are first line of defense because they're there. They're Europe, but we're going to help them out also.
So now the president is outlining the next steps toward peace, writing on Truth Social, quote, "I called President Putin and began the arrangements for a meeting at a location to be determined between President Putin and President Zelensky. And after that meeting takes place, we will have a trilat, which would be the 2 presidents plus myself." President Trump says he's optimistic about the trilat meeting, praising his long-standing relationship with President Putin.
I called President Putin yesterday, and I do have a good relationship, but it only matters if we get things done. Otherwise, I don't care about the relationship. I do have a good relationship with him, but I want to get things done. I've solved 7 wars. We ended 7 wars. I thought this would be one of the easier ones, and this has turned out to be the toughest one.
Lawrence Jones, a lot to unpack there on the heels of yesterday, which was a tremendous step toward possibly peace. What is your take?
Well, so often when you hear people talk about Donald Trump, you hear them call him the master negotiator. I think we saw master negotiator turn into master diplomat. And it was for the benefit of the country, obviously, but also the world. I don't think there's been ever a time you've seen a president of the United States have so many world leaders in the Oval Office surrounding the Resolute desk. And I think we've seen the European leaders buy into the philosophy. And Trump won, there was some animosity. At the beginning of his term, you even had some of them talking behind the scenes, going in front of the camera. And they realized that's just not how this president does business. He operates from a place of strength for our country first, but then he wants the killing to stop. So he increased the spending when it came to NATO. That was big, getting it to 5%. But also giving the Ukrainians the weapons and saying, look, I don't want any bloodshed. I don't want to go to war. That is not my objective here. And he did something that I think, I don't know if we could have predicted. So Putin said his red line was the Ukrainians joining NATO. Okay, the president took that. Okay, no, you can't join NATO. But I'm going to give you Article 5 protections. No one has proposed that before. The fact that the president was able to get that done was a big win for the country, also the world. Now we got to flesh out the details.
Right. And Molly, you and I covered this live yesterday together. What a strong, united front presented by so many European countries that was sending a message not only to the Ukrainian people, we are standing by you, but also to Putin that President Trump is not alone in his protection and determination with the Ukrainian people.
Yeah, it was remarkable to watch all of these 7 European leaders come in being welcomed into the White House and begin this meeting. And we have to realize there was so much for planning before this, getting NATO to put the extra money behind it. So there's actually sort of the meat and potatoes behind the people behind that are sitting at this big table. Giorgia Meloni, the Italian leader, who's trailblazer in her own right, sitting there next to the president, talked about how he'd done something remarkable to bring this dialogue into place. And that nation is one of those that first put forth the idea of the Article 5 protections. So these are people that are coming around. And a lot of phone calls have been made since these leaders left the table. The Coalition of the Willing, they've been talking, deciding among themselves, among all of these European nations, not just the ones that were at this table, but a much broader group, what exactly those potential protections, those security guarantees that Zelensky wants, what they're going to actually look like.
Lydia, talk to us about the stick that President Trump has in the way of sanctions and tariffs toward Russia, because we know that last night, the night of these peace talks, Russia still lobbed a bunch of missiles in Ukraine's way. So this is still a deadly war despite meeting and negotiations. So what happens next for Russia economically with Trump at the helm?
Yeah, Putin still continues to prove that he is really bloodthirsty in his attempts to in his conquest against Ukraine. But you're right. President Trump has so beautifully wielded his economic agenda that he still has a lot of levers that he can pull in putting Russia in the corner. There's still sanctions that they can employ on the SWIFT system and further excluding Russia from international banking and international transacting, which would make it really difficult for them to continue to do business on the global stage. They can still put pressure on all of their global trading partners, talk about India, talk about China as well. Huge stick there. We can also force our European counterparts, whom we just met with yesterday, to increase their own sanctions, stop buying even refined oil products that are made from Russian oil. Okay, you're not buying oil products directly from Russia, but don't even buy the refined stuff that India is making from Russian oil. So there's still a lot of levers that President Trump has made, and it's because he got this ball rolling with that beautiful Trump trade and tariff policy.
Yeah. So, Nicole, we heard yesterday that the potential for U.S. troops might be a reality, and that's surprising to a lot of Americans who knew that this president stands for peace and the end to these unending sort of wars. So what is your take on that and how that will play out?
I think that, some of us were surprised to hear that for sure, because, again, President Trump is the one that's going in and trying to end all of these wars. But I think he understands what is necessary in order to bring an end to this. And he's saying, look, U.S., we stand behind you. We support you. I think what's really stunning in all of this is President Trump's ability to strike it while it's hot. And that's a saying that I have always lived by. And he is looking at this moment. I mean, it was completely dead. No talks or discussions for 3.5 years. Millions. It's just so sad, the tragedy, the deaths. And he's saying, you know what, we're going to get in and make a difference. And he's not just talking, he's doing. He had the meeting with Putin on Friday, and then he turns around and has a meeting with all of these powerful individuals from Europe and these leaders. And I think people are waking up to this. And again, he tempers the excitement with saying, look, we're dealing with Putin, okay? We're all very excited and hoping for a peaceful ending here, but let's be realistic. But I think the key also in this is Melania Trump, and I have to give it to her. That letter that she wrote to Putin that we have now found out was about the children. I think that she has such a powerful influence on President Trump and in our ability, and I do think it comes down to human lives. Trump was kind of joking this morning about maybe this will help him get to heaven. You know what? Saving 5,000 to 7,000 lives a week, I think you're pretty secure in making it to heaven, and that is his goal, is to end the deaths.
And that's what it is about for the president, Emily. And he said something in our interview this morning on Fox and Friends. He said there are members of the European Union, members of the heads of state that visited him, that said they were concerned about things going back to the old way once his presidency was over. He goes, I don't want this to just be a 2 to 3 year end to the war. I want long-lasting peace. And I think that's going to be the key with these negotiations as they come.
And certainly if that trilat meeting happens following on the heels of the Zelensky-Putin meeting, I mean, historic does not even begin to cover it. Hey everyone, I'm Emily Compagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.